Hello guys, welcome back. Good evening. Welcome to Confetti Industry Week. I hope you've all had a really great day yesterday and you've been able to really get involved and join in with some of the guest talks. Yeah, really great opportunity for everyone to kind of just speak to our industry guests and get some really valuable insight into the industry. Just before we begin this talk, I just want to quickly apologise for the delay. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances that really couldn't be avoided by anyone, we did have to push this talk back by about 2 hours. So apologies for that. Thanks for bearing with us. I've just had a bit of a sneak preview of Simone's slide, and I can honestly say this is going to be worth the wait. So yeah, your talk today is with Simone, who is an animation director. He'll be talking to us about his career from being an animation student all the way to becoming a director for some of the biggest animation studios in the UK. So think Aardman, Jellyfish Pictures, Blue Zoo. Just a bit of housekeeping, please use the chat function to ask your questions, or I should say the link in the chat to ask your questions. You'll see a Google Forms that you can click into. So if you type in your questions using that form, we'll be able to see them and get as many of those answered as we can. We'll hope you enjoyed today's session, and a massive thank you to Simone for taking the time out for joining us today for our 15th Confetti Industry Week. Don't forget you can still book onto up-and-coming events by going to the following link, iw.confetti.ac.uk. There's still some amazing guests still lined up for the rest of the week, so make sure you check those out on that website. As part of Industry Week, we're also running a competition, and we can win some really cool prizes just by getting involved. All you have to do is tag us on Twitter or Instagram using the hashtag IW21. Share your experiences throughout the week, and hopefully you'll be in the prize pool to look at some cool prizes. I'll now hand over to you, Simone, so thank you.
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Can you see and hear me? All good?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you, Simone.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for joining this talk. And as said, I'm so sorry this had to be delayed. They decided to do some massive rework and drilling in the street just in front of my house here in London. So it was impossible for me to give a talk earlier, but I'm happy that you made it at 4 o'clock and that we can start now. So I will share my screen now and we can start with this talk. Share screen, share sound. Here we go. Today's talk is titled How to Not Starve Directing Animation, which is a bit the story of my life in the past 3 or 4 years since I became a freelancer. And I love telling stories. I love storytelling. So this talk will be divided in two segments, in two sections. First, I will talk about my own journey. I will talk about how I became an animation director freelancing for some of the biggest studios in the UK, starting from just an animation lover, starting as a person who loved animation, loved sketching and drawing and writing stories, and then developing my academic path, which brought me to the UK, and sequentially after that as a professional in this industry. And then the second part of the talk will be more focused onto the nitty-gritty of directing and animation. I would like to give you some meaningful and quite helpful tips in order to improve your shots, improve your acting skills, improve your composition when you are planning a short film or a sequence, an animated sequence. And hopefully this will be of inspiration for all of you who dream of becoming professional filmmakers or animators or directors in the future. So we can start. We can start with a bit of intro about myself. So first of all, the question is, who is Simone Giampaolo? You're probably asking yourself. I'm a short form and commercial director working. I'm represented by Aardman Animation, which is based in Bristol, but I can work with many other studios all over the world, but mostly in the UK. I have a strong bond with many studios here in the UK. Short form and commercial director means that I specialize in stories which are which are not too long in terms of timings, whether they are commercial of 30 seconds or they are short film of 1 or 2 minutes. At the moment, I'm directing a mini series of 15 episodes. Each episode is 2 minutes long. So everything which is short and sweet is a bit my priority and the branch I specialize in. That doesn't mean that a short form director can become then a long form director at some point or experiment in something longer, but at the moment I haven't had the chance yet to put my hands onto something like 20 minutes or 40 minutes long. Maybe, hopefully in the future, there will be a chance. At the bottom, you can see some of the clients I've been working for in the past few years since I started as a professional at Blue Zoo. And as I already mentioned quickly, I had a chance to work with many different studios, such as I started at Blue Zoo, the wonderful Blue Zoo. I moved to Axis, Jellyfish Pictures, Aardman, and all the others you can see here on the slide. This is just to let you understand that being freelancer doesn't mean, you know, staying in one place. It means also adapting and, you know, sort of trying to follow your path, trying to follow the flow and style of your own animation and creations, and that can bring you to different places. And I haven't been directing at all of these studios. Sometimes I help animating, sometimes I lead a team of animators, sometimes I just work as a simple, you know, one of the, I don't know, a storyboard artist or just an animator in the team. But, you know, that brought me to different places over the years, and that was positive because I had a chance to see a lot of people, meet a lot of different teams, observe how different studios work in different ways, and that became part of my package as a director. I now know how all these studios work, and that can give me a good backbone when it comes to organizing a team. Anyway, just to give you an example of what my sense of humor and what my style in animation is, please watch, there is a short reel of my work. The reel isn't up to date, unfortunately, and I will explain you later why, but it gives you a good idea of what I've been up to in the past few years. Okay, that hopefully gives you an idea of my style and what I've been up to in terms of animation and directing. Now a bit of history. Everything started a few years ago. This is a picture of baby me around 25 years ago, the moment in which I discovered that blue and yellow makes green. And I had that facial expression on my face. That's when I started like drawing. I started sketching, illustrating stories, writing stories since I can remember, since I was a child. And that really grew on me. Like when I was growing up, I started drawing comics and so on. So I've always had that passion, even though I didn't know that could become a profession at that point. I thought it would stay a hobby forever. And the funny thing is that I still have the same facial expression nowadays when I work in Maya in 3D. I still have like, and something good happens in Maya, and I still have that expression. But I grew up in Switzerland, in the Italian side of Switzerland. That's why I've got this accent. And I did normal high school. Like I went to like I specialized in languages, French, Latin, Italian, and German in Switzerland, thinking, oh, I don't know what I want to do really with my life. Probably languages will be helpful at some point. And at 18, I decided to focus on art. I wanted to give art a chance. And I came to the UK. I did 1 year foundation at the UCA in Maidstone, just trying different things, trying fine art, illustration, graphic design, and animation as well. And there is one thing I noticed straight away, that I really sucked at computers. I was so bad when I was around 18. I couldn't even use Microsoft Paint properly. And I thought I really need to solve this. I need to make sure if I wanna do something in the art industry, I need to become better at software. I need to, learn some technologies, making sure that I could become. It doesn't need to be necessarily in 3D, but become good at using new technologies. So I enrolled at Bournemouth Uni, which has got an animation course which is almost as good as the Confetti Institute of Creative Technologies. And I had a very good time at Bournemouth Uni, lots of parties and chill out at, at the pubs, as you can see from these pictures. Easy peasy. It was a very intense few years. Especially because I wanted to create some short films, which were not really one of the priorities for the Bournemouth course. Short films were, those years around 2013, 2012, they were really VFX focused. The industry of London in particular was very VFX focused. There was not much room for short films or creativity. It's much better now, I think. Now short films and short stories are becoming more popular in every course around the country. But at that point, people were more focusing on doing their own show reels or their own shots. But I really wanted to push for short films because that was my passion. My passion lied in, short stories. Anyway, in spite of all this sweat and tears, we managed to graduate. And as I said, I also managed to produce 2 short films, which became a bit of my business card. Thanks to these short films, one is called Espero, the other Police Feast, I managed to move my first steps into the industry. And Espero got me to Annecy, was selected by Annecy Film Festival, got in front of an audience, and then a few studios managed to notice me. So that passion for storytelling and shorts and stories became my weapon to get a job in the future. And I'll always be grateful to, the first studio which offered me a job in the UK, Blue Zoo, for recognizing that strength in storytelling. I'll show you what I did when I finished my course. I will not show both of them, just Police Feast, which is really short, only 30 seconds long. Enjoy. Okay, that took around 7 weeks from start to finish at the end of our graduation year in 2013. And I was ready now to do that leap. I was ready to, move from being a student to a professional. The big moment had come, but I realized that I got completely exhausted by that experience. I put so much energy and so much extra time, nights, days into those two films, which are Espero and Police Feast, that I was completely, my brain was almost shutting off at that point. And I overworked myself for the first time in my life. And I had to do something about that. I really admire students. I hear and I see students finishing their course and getting into a job straight away after a few weeks. And so, wow, I really admire you, and I really respect this, because I didn't manage to do so. I was so tired that I had to take a step back, move away from the screen, move away from the computer. And so I decided to go to South Africa for several weeks, just away from technology. I needed that break. I needed to get away from animation, and in particular from CGI and Maya. I spent a few weeks in an animal sanctuary in South Africa, just brushing cheetahs and cleaning crocodiles and bungee jumping. I just needed that, and then I came back refreshed. But as I said, not many people were interested in cartoony animation in the UK at that point. I think France was leading much more that kind of industry. Around 2013, people were really looking for the big studios like Framestore, Double Negative, ILM. They were looking for CGI and VFX artists for films. And I went with my very cartoonish reel and got rejected by many. So I had to make a choice whether to stay in the UK and try harder, or to get a first opportunity. And the only opportunity I got was at a very old school stop motion studio in Poland called Semaphore. Semaphore is that one studio which created the stop motion for Susie Templeton's beautiful Peter and the Wolf, which won the Oscar in 2006. It's a very old school place in the middle of Poland, in a place called Buch. And that was completely different from what I studied, but it gave me an opportunity to move my first step into an industry, to do some storyboard, to do help in post-production, and also to observe how a stop motion studio works, which was so fascinating. After spending 3 years in a computer lab, I was suddenly surrounded by beautiful miniature landscapes and puppets, that you could touch. It was very beautiful, very fascinating for me, even though it was not the job of my dreams. It was not what I studied for, but I took that chance anyway, because I thought it's better to do something than just wait. Anyway, after more than half a year in Poland, I got my first chance finally from Blue Zoo. They saw my short films, Police Feast and Espero. They got impressed, and they offered me a position as a junior animator and generalist in their commercial team. And I had a very good time at Blue Zoo. I stayed almost 5 years. And one of last time I came to Confetti for the industry week was 4 years ago, and I was still part of Blue Zoo. And one of the greatest thing about Blue Zoo is that they have a short film program. They allow people to pitch for seasonal shorts or original ideas. For example, a Christmas short, an Easter short, a summer idea, something, you know, more personal and closer to the hearts of the employees. And I love that because, as I said, I'm repeating myself now, but I love storytelling. I love short stories. So this was the perfect occasion for me to demonstrate that I can express my own story. I can communicate my own films idea in a studio. So I tried a few times, even if I was a newbie. And finally in 2015, here are some pictures from the pitching session, just so that you can see it's like you have to present in front of the whole studios, and then there is a voting system, and the one idea which gets the highest number of votes gets put into production the day after. And it takes a bit of courage, of course, to stand up in front of the whole studio, especially if you are a newbie in the industry. But I tried a few times, and finally in 2015, my idea won the pitching section. The idea was for a quirky Christmas short called More Stuff, which I'm gonna screen now. Enjoy.
Ho, ho, ho!
Forget about the joy of giving. Forget about Christmas cheer. You will find the meaning of Christmas right here. More stuff, more stuff. Everybody wants to get more stuff.
Stuff in a stocking, stuff in a sack.
You're killing the planet.
You're killing my back.
More stuff, more stuff.
It's
getting kind of hard to ignore stuff. We're running out of places to store stuff. You want more stuff.
More stuff.
You've already got enough stuff.
If you want our opinion on it, you don't need another new lunchbox just because it has a minion on it. Or a princess! A woolly hat that your granny chose.
You've already got 27 of those.
A useless juicer.
A selfie stick.
Now everyone can look like a total princess! We're wasting our time here, I think you'll agree, when you put it all on eBay in January.
The hours are lousy.
The pay is the pits!
And most of all, we have to wear ridiculous outfits.
More stuff, more stuff. Why does everybody want more stuff? Santa will be bringing you your stuff. You will know. Stick.
I hope that didn't offend anyone. So this was my very first big occasion to direct something, and the short went so well that it became very popular online, got a staff pick on Vimeo, got into a few festivals around the world, and that gave me the chance to direct more things at Blue Zoo. So I started, the owners of Blue Zoo and some of the bosses started assigning me to certain commercials or certain items for Lego products, for example, or Cartoon Network items or commercials, you know, those 15 seconds little animation which divide programs on TV. And that sort of started my career as a wannabe director or, you know, potential director in a studio. More Stuff was so well received that 1 year later, we decided to make a sequel, which was obviously called No More Stuff. This is much shorter. I will play it as well, but this is much shorter than the first one.
They promised me they'd do the job. I trusted them. That trust is broken now. I'm back.
Who's responsible?
Guess who's made the list?
Okay, that happened when Santa came back and found all the elves naked. That brings me to the last short film that I directed at Blue. I will not play this one. You can find it online, of course, if you want to watch it. It was also played in Fortnite last week for a short film festival that was held by Fortnite inside the game. I don't know if some of you still play Fortnite, but it's a good piece of trivia. This was, after this short film, I decided to leave and try to become a freelance director. So I tried to establish myself as a director who could work with different studios, not just with Blue Zoo. And I wanted to tell you a bit about that experience in case you are thinking in the future of becoming freelancer over a full-time employee. What are the differences when it comes to animation, and what kind of skills and what kind of personality traits you should have in order to handle them? The two different options, for example. I was lucky though to get the interest of Aardman. After leaving Blue Zoo, they decided to sign me as a commercial director. Of course, that meant a lot to me. It was a bit of a dream, to have Aardman Animation be interested in your work. But being signed as a freelance director by a studio doesn't mean that you work as a director all year long. You have to have pitches. You have to win pitches in order to, to get on a job and to get on a project and to get paid. And not to starve, especially, which is the whole point of this talk, right? So Aardman became the tip of my iceberg, really. I had pitches and did job for them, but that was not full time. That was not all year long. I had to adapt, and I had to work as an animator for other London-based studios. For example, Ghost, Axis. I was teaching for a while at Escape Studios as well. I did some leading in the animation team at Red Knuckles. So I had to adapt. That dream of becoming a director doesn't come from one day to the other. You have to establish yourself. You have to get more trust from the studio, and the best way for doing that is to start, presenting yourself as an animator or as an artist in different studios in order to get that trust, get that relationship, which is very important to people, very important to professionals, because if you deliver something and people are happy to work with you in a studio, they are likely to call you back, not just as animator or artist, but also as a lead or as a supervisor or as a director as well. So pros and cons of between full employment director at Blue Zoo and freelancer. Pros are that I could choose, I could choose the project I was working on. That meant that I could pitch on personal ideas. I could bring forward my personal shorts and my dream projects. I had more freedom, you know, to jump from studio to studio and experience different environments and different people, different colleagues. That felt really good, and that felt really healthy rather than staying in the same place for too long. However, the cons are that you don't have the 100% security of salary at the end of the month. You are not there. Once you're permanent, you sort of get accustomed and you get used to your monthly salary. You know how much you're earning. You know what your position is in the studio, and you know it's much more comfortable in a sense. But that depends on your personality. I get bored quite easily in a sense. I like the environment to be dynamic and things to change and things to evolve. So for me, even if it's a bit risky to be freelancer because you don't know, you don't have the 100% security of having an income every month of the year, but that being dynamic and having the chance to move around, that was a strong desire and a strong input for me, and that made me decide to leave and become freelancer. So, but that really depends on your personality. It depends if you're more of a custom person who likes peace and, you know, they like everything being planned and security, or you're more of a daredevil, more of a person who like dynamism and likes things changing and, you know, things being a bit uncertain certain times. And I can tell you a bit about some new project. Unfortunately, not too much, and that's the reason why my show reel is dated 2018. It's because of the pandemic, two big projects I worked on at Jellyfish Pictures and now at Ritzy, they haven't been announced yet. They got postponed, and so I am not allowed to show you yet. The one project I am allowed to show, though, is a dream project that I started thanks to the fact that I became freelancer. Like becoming freelancer gave me enough freedom and sort of flexibility to start bringing forward a personal idea. And this idea was only a child. I will not screen the whole short here, and I will not spend too much time describing it, but just roughly, this is a dream project which gives, like an animated visual poem, which gives color and shape to one of the most important speeches ever given in the history of humankind, in my opinion, the one given by young Severn Cullis Suzuki at the United Nations Summit in 1992. That speech got very popular some years ago on YouTube. You can find it. You can just type the girl who silenced the world for 6 minutes, and that speech will pop up. And I contacted Severn. She was enthusiastic about the idea of turning that speech into an animation. And I got in touch with many different animation directors, assembled an array of awesome artists which use stop motion, CGI, 2D, traditional animation, and so on. And I asked everyone to make a segment of that speech. And I will show you the trailer now. The whole film is going around festivals, so I'm not allowed to screen it entirely online yet, but you can have a look at this trailer.
I'm only a child, and I don't have all the solutions. But I want you to realize, neither do you. If you don't know how to fix it, Please, stop breaking it.
Yeah, so this really was a dream project. It took around 1.5 years from the initial sketch to the final product. We had to assemble some fundings. We had to convince people to participate, making sure that everyone knew what to do. But it was amazing. It was the first time I had a chance to work with professionals in every animation technique. There is sand animation, there is paint on glass, there is stop motion, puppet, plasticine, CGI. It was, yeah, really impressive. I hope you'll manage to catch it at some point in some festivals around the globe, or maybe I add confetti in another in another event in the future. Anyway, all this to say that these kind of projects are possible, I think, because I became freelancer, so I can bring forward these personal ideas. As I said, the other projects I cannot talk about. I can just say that I'm currently at Ritzy Animation, which is a small studio based in London, working from home, of course, and we are doing a very fun and quirky environmental series for a big British broadcaster. But that will be it will be announced, I think, in a few months. So I cannot say anything more than that. Apart from that, it's another environmental product, very different from Only a Child, but still very meaningful. Okay, that's it. I've been chatting enough about me, I think. If you have any questions about, my career path, we can have some questions at the end of the session. Now I would like to talk about directing animation. I would like to show you some of the techniques I use, some of the tips and tricks that I apply sometimes to get shots together or to improve the shots that we are doing in animation, okay? So the second part now is dedicated to directing animation and about the nitty-gritty of animation itself. First question that everyone asks is, what the heck does an animation director do all day long? That's a bit, I get that question quite often because people know exactly what a director does on a set, a live action set, but they don't usually know what a director does on an animation. So from an objective point of view, an animation director turns scripts into animated visuals. But if you ask my producer, she would say, he turns money into dust. To which I would answer, no, I turn money into fun, of course. But to be honest, the truth is that that's pretty much what we do all day long as animation directors. We stay on the shoulders of our of our team members and tell them to move CG toilets left and right, adjust things, making correction to animation, making correction to poses, to color scripts, and so on. So the director has an overview on the whole animation pipeline, from initial concept and storyboard to final product. So every department. That doesn't mean that I know how to do everything. That's not the case. I can paint a little, but I'm not a concept artist, for example. I can model, but I'm not a modeler or a texture artist or a lighter or a compositor, but I need to know what every department of my production does in order to give feedback. So I had to learn a bit of Nuke, a bit of After Effects, a bit of modeling in Maya or Substance or all the other softwares, ZBrush, which are used. I needed to know what every person in my team has to do in order to make the animation possible, because as good Tony Bancroft said, the director of Tony Bancroft is the director of Mulan. A good director serves her or his team so that the team can serve her his vision. That's the most important thing a animation director can do. help every single member of his team in order to bring his vision to life, his creation to life. And how does an animation director do it? It's mostly following the process. The animation director takes care of the process. The process is step one, making sure storyboard work and they are turned into good animatics. So planning the shots, planning the animation. Second step for an animation director is layout, transitioning those ideas from paper, from storyboard, into a 3D CG environment with cameras in 3D and characters in 3D. And the third step, of course, is the actual performance of the character, animation itself, making it, making sure that the shot is ready for the lighters and the compositors. Here I show you just an example from the previous short film that I screened, more stuff, just to illustrate the process. So as you can see, the animatic on the top left, sometimes I do video references for before animating the characters. So you can see a picture of my old kitchen in London a few years ago. That turns into layout, making sure that the cameras are working, that the characters are staged in the right position, and then animation in the bottom right.
Forget about the joy of giving, forget about Christmas cheer. You will find the meaning of Christmas right here. Forget about the joy of giving, forget about Christmas cheer. You will find the meaning of Christmas right here. Forget about the joy of giving, forget about Christmas cheer. You will find the meaning of Christmas right here.
Forget about the joy of giving. Forget about Christmas cheer. You will find the meaning of Christmas right here. Forget about the joy of giving.
Okay, that's enough for you'll get these songs stuck in your head all night long. I'm so sorry. But that illustrates well, the different steps of the creation of a short film or a short animation. However, that looks all clear and linear and easy in a sense, but that's not really how a director's vision takes shape. That's a bit what I showed you with that progression video is a bit of a lie, because that's not how ideas are born, at least not for me. I don't know. Every director has got different ways for coming up with ideas. Some people just scribble some lines on the paper. Some people just do some quick sketchy drawing. And this is really what works for me. This is how my ideas are born when I come up with an idea for a short film. These are the initial sketches of the short film Links and Birds, which I did at Blue Zoo in 2017. So if you want the very sleek, very well-rendered and fancy lynx and birds on the right, you have to believe in some crappy drawings you do at the very start of the process. That's how I came up with the idea. One of the most important things for an animation director or a filmmaker in general is to endure those sketches, to believe in those first rough ideas and endure and keep believing until the end that can become something polished and something beautiful, I showed that sketch to my colleague Francesco Mazza at Blue Zoo, which became the co-director of Links and Birds. And, he would have never imagined like, oh, Simone, that short is gonna look great. Do you look at that as like, oh, I don't wanna work with you anymore, I guess. But the strength of an animation director is, keep going, persistence, making sure you believe. If you want the very fancy looking elf on the right, you have to believe in some very, very sketchy drawings and thumbnails that you see on the left. That's how More Stuff's idea was born, you know, simple sketches and some notes. Never underestimate the power of these simple sketches, which are called thumbnails. They are used in every company. Even this one you see are thumbnails from Wall-E, for example, from Pixar's Wall-E. Even the biggest studios, they use thumbnailing before getting into proper animatic and polishing of the storyboards. That's the most important tool you have, I think, to start telling your story. So this is the process with thumbnails at the beginning: storyboards, animatic layout, animation, and with a good amount of experience. And if you become sort of confident enough and your client, you already have a relationship with the client, you know what they expect from you, etc., you can skip the first two, but don't do that without the right amount of experience. I'm telling you why. It's not something you should do, especially at a student level or a junior position level. You always want to follow, you know, the thumbnail, storyboard, and animatic step. But sometimes timings are very tight on certain commercial jobs. And for example, on this Lego animation I did years ago, there was no time for storyboarding, really. They wanted to see something in 3D straight away. So I jumped into Maya and I basically did animatic and layout simultaneously. And it worked because I already knew the client. The client was Cartoon Network. I already knew what they were expecting, but I wouldn't suggest that unless you have good experience with Maya already. But yeah, sometimes that can happen as well, and it can turn out nice. Okay. Okay, apart from, you know, taking care of the process and making sure that every member of his team is happy and knows what to do, what else does a director do? A director grabs the audience's attention. That's the most important thing a director has to do in order to be successful, is making sure his audience or her audience knows where to watch and is engaged while watching the film. In order to do that, a director has to be able to lead the eyes of the audience, like a magician almost. How does he do it? There are different ways for attracting and leading the audience's attention and eye. One of them is dialogue. The second, staging or framing. Third, light and color. And the fourth, movement. I will go through all this step by step, but I will ignore dialogue just because that's not really something which is concerns too much animation. That's the performance of the actor, the voice actor. Each time a character moves and talks, that attract attention, and that's kind of straightforward and easy to understand. So I will skip that. What's staging and framing? So staging is the presentation of an idea so that it is completely and unmistakably clear. What does it mean? When we watch a screen, we want to make clear that the audience knows where to watch. We want to make clear that the audience knows what's going on and knows what the action and the purpose of the character is. I'm using an example from Wes Anderson here just because he's a master of symmetry and staging and framing. You can see that the environment is in a fantastic Mr. Fox's, for example, frames, how the environment creates certain, it creates certain frames and certain lines. You can see how all the elements, such as the little walls, the fields behind the character. I'm talking about the picture on the left now, the road itself, they generate lines. These lines, they can be called vector or kinetic or energy lines. They converge to the center, they point to the center, and that helps framing the character. Those lines tell the audience, hey, look in that direction. In the image on the right, you can clearly see that the perspective is helping focusing on Mr. Fox, fantastic Mr. Fox. There is the perspective, there is the character themselves, which are looking in that direction, and that pointing, the eyes of the character pointing, having their eyes oriented into that direction helps focusing the attention, as well as the frame. You can see there is a clear frame, like a bridge, on top of fantastic Mr. Fox that helps framing the character as well. Those are, like, keep in mind all these things when you plan your shots. Then next, another thing to keep in mind when staging and framing is the rule of thirds. What is the rule of thirds? Is dividing the frame into 9 different parts, and the points, the converging points, are usually the points of which attract the attention. This is linked to the golden ratio, and the fact that the attention of the human eye converges onto those points. So make sure that when you have a shot, your characters stay on those converging points, the focal points of attention. That's used, as you can see, that's used by filmmakers all over the world, in big production as well, such as Pixar. They use this trick in order to guide the audience attention a lot. Another thing to guide the audience attention is light and colors, of course. You can see here a frame from Schindler's List, and one from the short film, Pixar short film, The Blue Umbrella. Like having a saturated color around an unsaturated background, or an environment which lacks color, that definitely attracts the attention. Having a different color, such as a red umbrella, which is surrounded by a cold environment, a blue environment, that points the attention right to the center of the frame, right to where the characters are. That's very important to keep in mind as well when you choose your color palette of your film. Light as well, that's really important to attract the attention. Anything which is light and moves attract the attention. Anything which is white will always attract more attention than something which is darker. In that sense, also keep in mind shadows can be a very strong ally to create atmosphere and to guide the viewer's attention, the viewer's eye. Shadows are used sometimes for creating allegories, for creating metaphors. For example, Ryan Gosling, top left, is he could be like framed. He could feel like framed in this shot. I don't remember exactly what happened in that scene, but you know, that gives a sense of claustrophobia almost, because his face is framed by the shadow. Or it's largely used for spooky and horror movies to create more tension and atmosphere, but it doesn't need to be. It can be used in any sort of short films. 1 second. Sorry. And as mentioned before, movement. Movement is also a very strong ally of every animator when it comes to attracting attention. As I said, like magicians, what do magicians do in order to do their tricks and not reveal, you know, how they did their magic. Usually they make an unnecessary movement in order to get your attention while they slide the card away behind their back, or, you know, they try to get you on one side while they do something else with their other hand. And you can do the same in animation. You want one character, you want to underline the fact that one character is different from the other, then you can have one character going in the opposite direction of a crowd. That's used in many films, animated and non. You will immediately get the audience following that because the movement is different. And one way, this is a picture from the beautiful short film Presto. And that's literally a story about a magician having a hard time with a little rabbit. I'm sure you've seen it, and if not, look for it online. But what's great about that film is that it literally shows the power of anticipation, the power of those unnecessary movements, so very flamboyant, big poses in order to catch your attention and prepare you to something, or get your attention away from something else, which is not important. So that these are all things to keep in mind when planning your animated shots. Another important thing for directors, of course, are cameras. Whether they are real cameras or they are CG cameras, directors use cameras. And I had to learn a lot about them. Even though I've never really used a professional live action camera, I had to learn a lot about them in order to lead and direct the cameras within Maya, within the 3D software well. You have to know the possibilities that a CG camera has, but also the limitation that a CG camera could have in certain cases. First, remember that the camera is the very first character in your scene. So consider it like a character. What kind of personality has this camera? Is it still, or does it move? Is it a handheld? Does it follow the character? Does it anticipate the character, or it follows? So it's lower than the character. You have to consider all these in order to give the right vibe and the right mood to the viewer. So 1 second. Sorry, I think I need a little water. I'm running out of breath here. So the camera is first character in your scene. The rule is the KISS rule. As the good old Richard Williams said in his animator survival kit, keep it simple, silly. So make sure you understand what you want to achieve with your camera. Make sure the audience doesn't get confused by it, and make sure the story is told in a simple manner first before going. Oh, grazie. Sorry, I got some water. Make sure you are able to tell the story simply and linearly before you try things which are very fancy with the camera, because everyone loves very dynamic flying shots, you know, Marvel style around the city, the Avengers, camera spinning around the characters. Everyone loves that. I love using those. But you have to consider it's not always necessary, and sometimes overkilling with the camera can distract from the story, and that's a fail. That's a fail for a director if you distract from the story. I'll show you just this is not the worst example I could think of, but is one I found, which is quite old. just to show you how a very long, difficult camera movement could be confusing in a scene.
Any cold in the stove and you freeze in the winter and you curse to the wind at your face when you haven't any shoes on your feet and your clothes in the center and you look 30 pounds underweight. When you go to get a word of advice from the fat little pastor, he will tell you to love evermore, but your hand goes to that, rat-a-tat, at the window. At the window. See how the lights out the door. For money makes the world, the world, the world. The clinking, clanking sound of money, 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 money. Get a little, money, 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 money. Now together, work about it, makes the world go round.
Okay, that's enough. I don't know really who did that. It's an animation for I think WWF. I found online, and it's not the worst. I mean, it does work, but you can tell that stopping and going, that continuous movement of the camera, which is not on a linear path, it sort of accelerates and decelerates. It can make the audience feel a bit sick. And I've seen lots of these, especially from young animators or students, where they finally get a chance to move the camera and they get so excited that it starts doing so many fancy things, which are not usually needed. And learn the language as a director. The best thing is starting using the right language. So learn what's a dolly zoom compared to a track, compared to a tilt, because there is nothing wrong, nothing worse, I think, from a director to give a wrong instruction to the animator. Learn, even if you're an animator, it would be good to learn these terms in order to listen and in order to understand what the director wants. Clients sometimes they love the word pan, right? Everything is a pan. You can pan left and pan right and pan up and down. Everything is a pan, but that's not accurate. That's not actually what happens. Yeah, with a real camera. And yeah. If I had, to suggest something, I would say, an animator is suggesting a dolly for this shot. It's great. Go for it. Good idea. If the animator is starting to suggest a dolly plus a pan, I will go, yeah, try. I think it could work. But, my reaction when I start seeing too many camera movements in one shot with too many axes moving and rotating, then usually my reaction is this. It's like, please don't touch so many axes in the camera. Just keep it linear, or at least have one simple camera rotation. Don't overkill, because that can distract it. And I can show you that even with a very simple camera movements, you can have very dynamic action. This is, for example, something I animated for Disney XD some years ago. And look how, even though these cameras are fairly simple and fairly static, or they have just one movement in one axis, look how cool and how action-packed a sequence can look with the right timing and the right editing. Yes. This was super short. I will play it again. So every shot in this sequence was a simple camera movement. There was no big rotation or orbiting shots, but the action is very high and the energy is very high. So consider that when planning your shots. This is all to say that sometimes it takes experience to understand that a pro camera move isn't needed. That's really much to sum it up. Another important thing that I needed to learn in Maya is focal length. Focal length is absolutely necessary in order for a director to plan his shot. And I will show you the differences in focal length here. So 35 millimeters, when you create a scene in 3D, for example, 35 millimeters is the default that Maya creates for you. Guess that camera. And when I was a student or a junior, I used to keep that throughout the whole shot or throughout the whole short film. I didn't even question it. Why should I change it? It's such a, I don't know, I think 35 will always work for everything. But truth is, as you can see, that it gives a very, very different result at 35 millimeters from a 105 millimeters. The 105 flattens everything. You see, you feel less perspective. You feel less distance between the elements. For example, the structure here in the foreground and the house, the building in the background, they feel much further away when the focal length is little. So long lenses like 100 will help flatten everything, and that's important when you have close up on characters. Look how beautiful and handsome our guy looks on 80 millimeters, and compare it to the 24. I mean, would you date that guy on the 24 millimeters? I don't know, but you know, that's very important to when planning, when you have a cute character or you have a facial shot, a close-up, to know these things, because characters look more appealing when the camera, the length of the lens is longer. So when the lens is 80 millimeters or over, it's very important to remember. There is also depth of field, really, which is something that you can learn using cameras. You can learn using, for example, if you are into photography or you do photography, you learn how to create depth of field. But that's something that in animation can also be faked easily. So that's why depth of field, it is something to be conscious of, but sometimes in compositing you can fake depth of field. So it's something that it's not 100% necessary, but focal length, very important. So deepening short lenses from 25 to 40 millimeters, these for dramatic shots or landscapes when you want to show a lot of the surrounding, or for a forced perspective when you want to have a very dynamic shot of a character with the hand very large in screen, punching the villain, you see, and you see the body small behind the big fist. You know, you want to create that foreshortening, that forced perspective, which is very cool. It's used a lot in Japanese animation, for example. Whereas the flattening long lenses from 50 to 200 millimeters, they are usually used for dialogues, for comedy, when things need to be flat and we need to focus more on the dialogue. That used for beauty shots, as I showed, you know, when you want a character to appear nice and beautiful, and there will be less background in shot. So a long lens is definitely not advised if you want to show a landscape. Here are a few books I'd like to recommend you for everything I've said so far. Directing for Animation by Tony Bancroft, The Visual Story, and Directing the Stories. They are great books which explain more in depth what I've been mentioning here, you know, the use of cameras, the use of composition, the use of storyboarding in order to tell, in order to display your idea in front of an audience. And now for the final part of this talk, will focus on appealing animation. So this is more centered onto the actual performance from an animation point of view. How do we make an animation appealing? How does a character becomes more appealing than others? What are the tricks? What are the strategies in order to achieve that? So there are a few points to keep in mind when animating a character. And there are lots of principles of animation. There are around 12 basic principles of animation, but I'm not gonna go through those. They can be found in every book or every tutorial online. It will show you the principles of animation. These are more the tricks to create appeal. The first one is visual rhythm. The second, strong posing, contrast, creative breakdowns, and feel your character. I will go through each point now quickly. Visual rhythm. What is visual rhythm? Visual rhythm is the speed, pace, time combined and merged and portrayed into visuals. So when you mix time and space in a performance, you get visual rhythm. And that visual rhythm can be described by an appealing timing, appealing beats, an appealing rhythm. And the best way in order to create appeal is to breaking up the beats. I will show you an example very soon, but you know, if the rhythm of your metronome is this, the timing isn't appealing because it's all the same. But if you start breaking it and making beats which are faster and beats which are slower, then the audience start getting engaged a bit more and start dancing along your creation and your story. It's important that these beats, this important accent which happen on screen using timing and spacing and using movement, it's important that they also occupy the full screen, that you make use of the depth in the screen, so stuff which are close to camera, stuff which come further away from camera, and that you use the full surface of the screen. It's like a stage, you know, if you're on a stage in front of an audience, you want to make use of that full stage in order to engage your audience. That creates energy and silence, the contrast between energy and silence, which is very important. Sometimes silence is more important than noise and beats. In Japanese animation, they call it ma, M-A. Ma is a beat of silence. And they are masters in, if you watch Japanese animation, Studio Ghibli's animation, they are masters at using beats which are pauses, which is silence, and contrasted to very high energy beats, which create interest. So the two together need to be used in order to create interest. I'll give you just an example or a couple of examples. As you can see here in this animation, which was made at Aardman some time back, you have a clear, you have clear visual rhythm, which is engaging because there is a bee right in front of the screen, which then gets in the background and you reveal a new character in the background. The move, oh, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Second. The rhythm starts slow and it's quite linear at first, and that described easily and quite clearly by the music as well. And then in the second half, it gets more dynamic and the beats increase in speed. Another example is this animation made by Mindbender. I love this company. I find it brilliant. I've never worked with them, but I would love to in the future. And you can really feel the beats, feel the visual rhythm, listening to the taps that the cat's feet make on the table. So at first it's very slow, and then goes ta-da-da-dam, ta-da-da-dam, pang, pang, pang at the end. So that underlines his anxiety when he's on the table and pop, 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 doesn't know what's going on. And then he gets hidden, and that tap sort of describes the visual rhythm. I'll play it quickly again. Tum, tum, tum. So yeah, just remember, don't make everything happen at the same pace. Make sure that there is a song in your visuals. That's the best way to engage your audience. Strong poses. Strong poses is like the basics of animation. If your poses are not good or not compelling enough, the animation won't be good. That's assured. So how do you do strong poses? It's just like drawing, really. Whether you're doing animation in 2D or in CGI, like me, spend time really making these important poses, which are the key poses, the one which tell the story. And include every part of the body in this pose. Make sure that the pelvis is rotated, the chest is rotated, shoulders are important, hands are really important to tell emotions, and sometimes they are left like this, the paddle hands. I've seen that very often. Think of the silhouette, and don't overact. That's another thing which is important. Sometimes in animation, we try to convey too many emotions in a dialogue. For example, I think I should go to the shop and drink a coffee. I think I should go to the bar and drink a coffee. I think I should go to the bar and drink a coffee. And you describe every thought with one action. That's overacting, and that's not necessary usually. So choosing one pose per emotion, that's more than enough. And then you can work within the pose. So rather than I think I should go to the bar and drink a coffee, you can have I think I should go to the bar and drink a coffee. So just one within that pose. You can work within that pose and present the idea much clearer. This is an example of clarity in silhouette. You know, like which one do you think is better and stronger? Oh, of course, the one on the right. But why? Because of the symmetry, because of its stiffness, because of the silhouette is much clearer. The one on the left, we don't know what's going on here. Really, is he break dancing, or is he like I don't know, just a puppet? Whereas the one on the right is much clearer because of the gesture of his hand, because of the way the legs are positioned. Another example here, which one is clearer? Which one tells the story better? Of course, the one on the right. Again, the silhouette, the intention of the character is clearer. There is a clear line of action which travels around the character. Actually, I can draw quickly on this. I think using, can I use? Yeah, I can. Fantastic. So you can see here how parallel to the ground everything is. The pelvis, the shoulders. In the one on the right, the shoulders aren't parallel to the ground, and the pelvis isn't parallel to the ground. the legs aren't symmetrical to each other as much as the one on the left. So that all creates appeal. On this one, there is a clear line of action traveling throughout the character, you see, and every limb, every part of the body sort of gets dragged and follows that line of action. Whereas in the left one, it's like ambiguous, because he doesn't know. It seems awkward position where the character doesn't know what to do. Remember, it can be done, the same principle can be applied to a face. So, you know, to create asymmetry and appeal to the face, make sure the face is not symmetrical. Make sure, you know, that there are lines which run along the face for the nose, mouth, and eyes. Make sure they aren't parallel to each other. Make sure that they favor the direction in which the character is looking, for example. That's quite important for creating an organic feeling in a character. Contrast. Contrast between poses is extremely helpful in order to create contrast. Basically creates appeal, because contrast generates surprise. So if a character is leaning forward and then backwards, that will create contrast and therefore surprise. And make sure there is enough contrast between poses so that you have somewhere to go for the characters. Squash and stretch can help, of course. Give yourself, as I said, somewhere to go in a unique way. So it doesn't need to stay, the character doesn't need to stay always in the center. The character can move to the right screen, and then to the left, and then switch the weight from one leg to the other. There are different ways to really achieve that contrast, and therefore surprise, which can generate humor or horror, depending on the product you are working on.
You serious?
So yeah, this is an example of creating contrast. There is the body which is convex and then concave, and that creates that nice contrast in the silhouette. Creative breakdowns, very important for creating appeal in animation. Breakdowns are really where the magic in animation of animation lies. It's, you know, that in between that one key pose and the other. And make sure that Maya or the 3D software you're working with doesn't do the job for you. Make sure that you don't just press the button and it interpolates. Make sure that you command, that you are in charge of that in between. A good breakdown has all the information about the body. It's very hard sometimes to block, but a good breakdown can save hours of work, really, especially in 3D. And look and experiment with that breakdown using arcs. I'll show you an example. This is an animation I did years ago. There is a character in position 1 and character in position 2. And in order to go from 1 to 2, there are 1,000 different ways, but I chose to use this, like using like a smear frames, which arcs and create a nice curve in the picture.
They are savages. Tonight we die.
That doesn't mean that everything needs to be so exaggerated and so, cartoonish, but this gives you a clear idea that the in-between can be very creative, very exaggerated as well. That's not something which has been invented in 3D. This was already used by the masters of 2D animation at Disney, for example. You can see some examples on screen here. Those creative in-betweens or smear frames or multiples, how they are called, cannot really be seen because sometimes the action is so fast, but they can be felt, something that the viewer feels. And that's something quite beautiful, I think, about animation, something that you can feel, but you cannot really point out. yeah, there are of course some rules in order to create these mirror frames and multiples. These are the rules for 2D. This comes from the Character Animation Crash Course by Eric Goldberg, a very good book which I recommend. But in CGI, it's not always so straightforward. You cannot just follow the one frame rule. You have to, in CGI looks has a tendency of looking a bit more mechanical if you don't ease in and ease out from a pose. So you make sure just you add a bit more frames for easing in and out of a very fast in-between, which can last only 1 frame or 2 frames. Final tips for using Maya. If you are a Maya user, I don't know what you learn there, or if you have different software, but that can apply really for every 3D software. Just make sure that you hide everything in a scene which is not needed, so that can speed up your scene. Make sure you animate to camera, so place the camera and make sure the performance looks good from your point of view, unless you're animating for a video game. In that case, it's a bit different because the character has to look good from every point of view. Keep the animation simple and fun. I know that sounds easy to do, but it isn't. Keeping things simple sometimes is more difficult than overcomplicating stuff, definitely. And make sure you use free tools which are online. Twin Machine, Studio Library, Pickers. Make sure you make good use of these free tools, because they will be big allies in the industry once you step into actual studios. And here we go. First, this is the last point to create appealing animation, but also the most important, is feeling your character. You cannot have a good performance if you don't enter your character's shoes and you feel what the character should be feeling. It's important that you try it yourself, whether you film yourself or you act it out in front of the computer. Sometimes I don't have time to film myself, so I just animate while crying or while smiling, because that's the performance I want to give to the character. And with the years of experience, you will build a library of acting choices in your head, so that you will remember what kind of muscles are necessary for smiling, or what kind of movements are necessary to, show a character scared or a character crying. Look at real inspiration from your life. Start observing your fellow students, start observing your family members, see if they have some peculiar movements or some strange reaction or specific movements they do with the eyebrows or with the eyes. These are all interesting, inspiration that you can use in your actual performance. A way, apart from observing people, don't get to make sure that you don't start following people in the park, or you don't stare at people around on the road for too long, because that can get you into troubles. But become a good observer of life and of human beings. Make sure that you analyze and you observe good performance of amazing movie actors, for example, or actresses. That's a very big help, showing their performance, seeing what kind of facial expressions they do, and learning muscle anatomy. It's a plus, absolutely. If you are working a lot with facial expressions and character performance, you should learn the basics of what's needed for expanding the muscle or contracting them. And why do we open the eyes wide and drop the jaw when we are surprised? That's because surprise, the brain is trying to calculate, is trying to elaborate something sudden and something surprising, and therefore it needs more oxygen to the brain. And that's why we drop our jaw to get more air inside our lungs and into our brain, and we open our eyes in order to get more information because something sudden and something unpredicted happened. So like learn these basic human emotions such as surprise, happiness, disgust, fear, and so on, and also see why the human body reacts to them. This is a great, great weapon that you will use as an animator. Here is a book I recommend, what everybody's saying about reading behaviors and body reading. It's by a ex-FBI agent called Joe Navarro. He was specializing in finding out people who were lying, for example, or finding out if the criminal was telling the truth or not by recognizing certain behaviors and certain, twitch that the body sometimes cannot control. You're not always in control of all your movements. We are very good at controlling our face. And that's why we learn to smile, even though we don't like a person sometimes, just to be to be polite. Sometimes we can control our facial expression, but our feet or our hands are telling a different story. If you are at a party, you can notice that, well, not right now, of course, in the past year, not many parties have taken place, but in the future, you can notice that if a person is engaged, is keeping their feet straight, pointing at the person which is talking, the person he or she is talking to. But if the person isn't engaged, the feet are pointing away, because even though he keeps smiling and keeps being polite, the body is telling a different story, that the body wants to go away. And sometimes we cannot control those involuntary movements or involuntary posing of our body. Here is a short video, which I think sums up very well what feeling the character means.
Allez, faites-moi le cheval. Ah non, 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 pas le cheval. Ah non, 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 pas le cheval, pas le cheval. Que croyez-vous faire, là, monsieur? Le cheval? Le cheval? Et quel cheval, je vous prie? Prétendez-vous être tous les chevaux réunis en un seul? Ne savez-vous pas que, comme nous, les hommes, chaque cheval est unique, qu'il a son caractère, sa personnalité? Vous me montrez un homme qui fait le cheval, monsieur Jourdain. Pas un cheval. Êtes-vous un fier andalou? Aussi fougueux que farouche. Êtes-vous un sale Français, altier et noble? Robuste percheron. C'est un métier, monsieur Jourdain. Un métier du sentir et non du paraître.
Okay, so it's a matter of sensitivity, to sense what your character is feeling and what your character wants. I realized it's getting quite late, so I will go quickly through these. A few other books which I would recommend in order to analyze your character and understanding how the character can act in your story. And my talk finishes with this today, with final career advice. Be nice, work hard, recycle, do what you love. These are 4 points which seem super straightforward and, you know, taken for granted, but be nice is because you don't know the people you will work with in the future, the people who will give you a job in the future. So make sure that you keep a good contacts and good sort of a good atmosphere in your studio, so that people will want to work with you in the future. I give you an example. The 2 guys who employed me to direct this mini-series I'm doing now, they were 2 they were my former colleagues at Blue Zoo 6 years ago, and they left Blue Zoo and created their own company, Ritzy Animation. But they liked working with me at Blue Zoo, so they decided to call me back. So that's very important to keep, you know, to make sure to respect everyone in your studio, because you don't know where, you don't know, maybe the junior, which started last week at your studio, will become your supervisors in in a few years' time. Work hard, but knock harder. That means work hard, of course, that needs to be done for this profession. There is no success in animation without working hard. But I see a lot of people not being able to show their work, to work super hard and then keep stuff hidden away because they are not confident enough to show them. I think you should, you know, try to display as much as possible your work, which means knock hard at doors, make sure people know you, make sure people know what you're doing, make sure that potential employees know your name, even though maybe you're not up to the level yet for their studio or their company, but at least make sure that people know how hard you're working to get there. The worst thing you can do is just shy away and keep your showreel hidden for 2 years and working on it. I've seen a lot of people doing that, and it doesn't produce any results, really. Recycle means making sure your work doesn't get wasted. There are so many, as a director or a story maker or an animator, you come up with so many ideas, so many different concepts, so many different stories sometimes, and they can be placed in a, you know, on a shelf, but make sure that you know they are there, because you never know when they can come back and useful, you know. If you have an idea for a story that can be put into practice, that can become a real project in the future if the possibility arises. Make sure you don't waste work. You keep track of the work you've done to reuse it in the future. And do what you love sounds really, you know, idyllic, really good to hear and to do, but what it means is don't do like whatever you want. It's be honest with yourself, understand what you really like and what your person can appreciate, and then pursue that direction. For example, I love quirky characters which do silly gags and fart on screen. I had to be honest with myself. I had to accept that, and now I'm doing stuff that I like. I didn't want to go into VFX and be forced by a trend of, you know, real live action mixed with animation, because I knew that wouldn't be me. That wouldn't be my personality. So make sure you are honest with yourself in order to have a smoother transition into your career, and also build a stronger career. That's all from me, really. Sorry if it took a bit longer than I expected. I've been blabbing away for a very long time. That's it from me. I'm very happy to answer some questions now, if there are any.
Brilliant, thank you, Simone. That was a really engaging talk, and I'd love to just see your work and how your role as an animation director has involved some of those projects that you've shown us. So yeah, I think we've just got a very small bit of time for some questions. So I think I'm going to start off with this one, which is quite an important one. Do you think you need to study animation to become a producer or director?
To become a producer, no. Absolutely, absolutely not. It's important for a producer to understand these steps, which are necessary to create animation, but it's not necessary. For a director, it's not necessary either. There are directors which come from script writing, directors which are storyboard artists, directors who are concept artists, and directors who are animators. So if you're interested in becoming a filmmaker and a director, you don't need to study animation. It does help with the performance, because if you can direct the performance of a character, it's like directing an actor on set. It helps, but it's not 100% necessary. No, choose your own path. If your passion is concept art, you can also become a director. If your passion is writing, you can also become a director. Okay, but it does help knowing acting, but it's not necessary.
Awesome, brilliant. It's great to hear that you don't necessarily need to know animation in too much detail to actually do a very high role, which is obviously producer or director. I think just on the back of that then, what non-creative skills do you think are essential for the role that you do?
That's definitely public relations.
Yeah.
Or better, more than public relations, I would say the ability of presenting an idea in front of an audience, you know, that elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I had the luck in my past, before coming to the UK, I was working as a Greenpeace member, a Greenpeace fundraiser on the street in Switzerland. So I learned that skill of presenting an idea in 30 seconds, making sure that, you know, I could focus my attention into convincing the viewer of the good and of the importance of a certain message or a certain theme. That skill still remains to this day, because I still have to convince clients, I still have to convince executive producers of my idea, and being able to clearly present in front of an audience is priceless. If you can do that, you can convince everyone, and, you know, get your show made, and, you know, you will have a way easier career as a director if you can communicate clearly.
Excellent, really great to hear you actually talk about elevator pitching. It's something that we always try and get our students to kind of have a go at, because it's just so important to be able to communicate clearly your ideas, and I suppose it's the art of selling. So it's really interesting to hear you actually mention that.
Exactly, yeah.
And again, just along the subject of your role, really interesting question here from Kibi. He says, what is or was your most difficult task to do as an animation director?
Oh. I'll be honest, I think the most difficult task is to let someone go. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes certain people which you choose for your team are not right, or some people are still not strong enough for a certain role, and that slows down production, and it's really bad for everyone, because everyone else has to help and cover that. So letting someone else go, or repositioning one of the elements of your team to a lower role, that's really difficult. I find it that painful and a bit difficult to handle. But you have to be honest with yourself and your production team. And if someone is slowing down production in a certain way, you have to be strong and take action as soon as possible in order to avoid losing time and money. But that, I find it still the most difficult thing to do, you know, like, yeah.
Oh, really didn't expect that answer, because you kind of expect, okay, maybe just trying to get your head around a difficult shot would be difficult. But yeah, really interesting to hear you actually say, I suppose the emotional impact of having to look at your team in that way and let someone go.
Yeah, whether, or you know, after all, directing is also making harsh decisions at times. So of course, it's every show has got some hiccups and certain unexpected issues which happen, and that's difficult to handle. in terms of animation, in terms of clients, you know, making sure the clients is pleased with what you're doing. But I find the most difficult stuff sometimes is taking those harsh decisions for the bigger good of the show.
Yeah, definitely. Really interesting question here from Medj. If you could go back and tell yourself something at the beginning of your career, what would it be?
Oh, I would tell myself probably to keep drawing. Don't stop drawing. When I got into Blue Zoo and I started doing CGI, I sort of put drawing on a side, and now drawing has become only something I do for thumbnails. For example, you know, these are the kind of drawings I do nowadays. These are from the show, from the top secret show I'm directing. Lots of thumbnails, but they are very, very simply drawn. I think if I could go back, I would force myself to keep drawing well, keep improving drawing while I do Maya or CGI, because sometimes I feel like I wish I could draw a bit better now, because I've been using CGI for so long that I have lost some of that skill. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, really cool to hear. Interesting question here from Ted, which is one of our first year college students. He says, I'm thinking of making animations primarily on social media and doing commissions as my career as a freelancer instead of applying to film companies and VFX houses. Should he pursue this?
That's a very good start, but that at first you will not have an income. That's the point. Like if you do animation for social media, that can start growing your audience. If you do animation for YouTube, that might bring you to a certain contract with a house in the future. It's definitely something to do because it keeps you busy, makes you produce your own content, and I highly recommend that. But just consider the fact that you might not get an income maybe for 1 or 2 years, depending on how much you can produce per month and how well your social media goes. So be careful with that. It's a good idea, but be careful you get an income as well, whether from a freelance work with studios or freelance gigs that you do on your own. I don't know, but be careful not to focus too much on your social media without any income. That's what I would say.
Brilliant. Hopefully that's give you some thought there, Ted. But yeah, good to hear that. I suppose it's possible to work as a freelancer, but you will obviously face difficulties there, as you said, Simone. Let's have a look. Interesting one here from Joe. What is your opinion on motion capture technology? Do you think there's a place for the technique in animation, particularly in the style that you've done, you know, with squash and stretch? So yeah.
Motion capture is great when it comes to photoreal animation. For example, it's very widely used in game cinematic. Studios such as Riot Games or Axis Studios in Scotland, or even Framestore or DNEG, they use motion capture for, you know, real human beings, and that works. I definitely recommend that. It's not as creative as doing cartoon animation though, and I think cartoon animation cannot be replaced by motion capture, because you will never find a human being who can actually squash and stretch as much as you can do with a rig. So it is a good technology. I think it's brilliant and saves hours of work for photoreal human beings and creatures, but I don't think it will ever replace cartoony animation and the artistic decisions that cartoon animators do on a shot.
Okay, wicked answers. Good to hear that. Well, at least animators will still have a job for a while, based upon their own kind of creative input. So that's actually good to hear. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see how animators will use motion capture to some extent. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, so what I want to try and have a go at is just a couple of quick fire questions, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
So, quick one. What inspires you in general?
Good question. That changes. There are so many variables. That depends on the moment of my life. I get inspired by films a lot, by stories, by comics. I read a lot of comics. But what I noticed in the past years is that I get inspired by stepping away from the screen and the computer. As I mentioned during my talk, I went to South Africa after finishing my uni degree because I had to go away. I had to find that inspiration again. I had to be, relieve my brain from all the pressure and from all the sort of toxic cyber environment that the computer can generate in your mind. I think stepping away from the monitor gives you the best inspiration. I get the best ideas, for example, when I cannot access my phone or my computer, when I'm flying, for example, and I'm like in that sort of daydreaming mode. I'm not sleeping, but I'm not awake either. That's the moment in which I get the best ideas and the best inspirations. Is those sweet moments where I'm away from technology and my mind is relaxed and I can wander around, and find new stories or new script inputs. Yeah.
Brilliant. Good to hear that. Okay, another question. What has been your favorite project to work on? So over the past few years.
It must be Only a Child, I think. Yeah. Even though I did Only a Child all in my spare time. So in the evenings and at weekends, I was directing the guys while I was working at Jellyfish Pictures. It must be that, just because it combines every animation technique and it tells the story of an environmentalist, which is one of the most important people I've ever met in terms of, themes, in terms of her values, Severn Kali Suzuki. So it must be that. When it comes to computer-generated animation, so CG, I would say the project I'm doing now, the one which is going to be released in June, is probably my favorite, because even though it's not my own idea, the show, it's a separate client who came up with the concept. We are doing everything from scratch. We did the scripts, we did the gags, we did the personality of the character. So being able to control so much of the final result really makes every filmmaker very happy.
Awesome. I think we're all looking forward to seeing was it Only a Child coming out. I think it looked fantastic.
Thank you.
Got an interesting question here from Jack. Just to give you a bit of context, he's a filmmaking student who makes stop motions using Lego as his medium. He just wants to know what, I suppose, tips would you recommend him that kind of separates his work from others?
That's a tough one, because Lego has been used so many times for stop motion. It is, and then it was made into CGI animation with the Lego movie and the Lego movie 2 with the Batman movie, and it was used so much, abused, I would say. I think the best way you can do is in the script. The best way for you to be different from the others is really making sure that your script and your dialogues are fun, maybe combining Lego with different materials such as paper and plasticine. You can create like a hybrid sort of technique which doesn't exist, but it is tough because Lego have been used so much. So I think the best way to create attraction, to make you stand out, is in the script. To make sure the script and the dialogues are engaging.
Awesome. Based on time, I think we'll just ask one more question. And I think this is, again, really interesting one, and I think it could also tie into your inspirations. So this is from Jessica. She says, if you could work on any film that has been made already, what film would you have liked to have worked on?
Oh wow! I think it would be whether Toy Story or Spirit. Spirit by DreamWorks. Those two films really made a big impact on me and made a big impact on my career. So it would be those two, yeah.
Brilliant, awesome. Thank you, Simone. Apologies to anyone that did ask a question, and unfortunately we just didn't get time to it. But of course, thank you to you, Simone, for giving your time with us today. You've really broken down the process of animation and really talked about your journey as an animation director. It's been really interesting to hear your I suppose, life and work. So thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I hope to be back in Nottingham in the future, for giving a live talk and to meet the students in person. It's a bit weird to talk to a screen here, and it's not something I'm super happy about. So I hope in the future we can meet in person.
Oh, absolutely, I'm sure of it. Because yeah, like you say, it's a bit weird that I'm kind of talking to a camera and not a human being. So hopefully, yeah, we will see you in the future. So yeah, again, thank you. Wicked.
Fantastic.
So for the participants or the students in the chat, you're free to go. Simone, if you just want to stick around for another minute or so, and we'll have a quick debrief.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for coming, and I hope you really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.